Can you guys hear me?
Hi, Pearl. We can hear you fine. You can.
I can start. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Pearl Lolo Masuha. I'm the acting managing exec for retail and logistics for Vodacom. Just to give context to today's discussion, so we're talking today about connected supply chain. And if we look at a research that was conducted by Grant Thornton of supply chain companies globally, they found that 57% of the respondents had highlighted that they could highlight risks within their processes with some investigation over some time. So therefore, usurping the organization's ability to make decisions very quickly. And 23% could isolate the problems and the challenges within their process, mitigate them and manage the process with the right systems in place. Therefore, showing that there is still quite a gap with regards to supply chain companies being able to have end-to-end visibility of their supply chain and be able to manipulate and make changes as and when required. So when we look at the coronavirus pandemic, there are three lessons that have been learned from a supply chain perspective. And these have been basically highlighted as there is a massive need for redundancy. And when we talk about redundancy, we're not talking about getting rid of some systems, but it is actually creating duplication within the system so that should anything happen, then we're able to leverage whatever systems are still up and running. In the last few years, supply chain has become increasingly lean. And though these systems have been made lean for the purposes of cost cutting, there is still little room for error when disaster strikes. So some of the strategies that have been taken over time is stockpiling, where possible, where stock is not available in one place, we then house it in another place. But this is also very limited. Another area that has been highlighted as a potential area of focus is flexibility with partners. So collaborating with partners is very important. So you need to build framework agreements so that when something happens, there is actually visibility across the organization as to where you can basically chop and change suppliers in order to fulfill to your customers. And that collaboration with suppliers need to be transparent so that it enables collaboration. And it also means that even the transportation aspect of the business needs to be visible at all times so that we can have solutions like track and trace in place so that customers can start seeing, not only customers, but suppliers can start seeing where their stock and their produce and all of that are at any given time, right? To manage the disruption here and in the future. The other area that needed to be looked at was improved communication, not only within the organization, but also with our suppliers to ensure for better preparedness for the future. But this also needs to be extended so that it is in flight and can be amended at any given time. So the question you might ask is, why Vodacom? So Vodacom is a retailer, and with a very strong supply chain in the back end to ensure that our distribution and our service delivery to a customer is always seamless. And as a retailer, we've basically had some disruptions due to the pandemic as well, and we've had to put systems in place to ensure that we are agitating for change as to how our consumers, how we procure our solutions, how our customers consume them, and how they receive fulfillment at the end of the chain. Beyond Vodacom being a retailer and a distributor of mobile and fixed services, over the last couple of years, Vodacom has transformed itself from being a native telco solution provider to becoming more industry-specific industry specialized technology company with expertise focused, for instance, in this case, on retail and the logistics industry. So with our verticalization, and we have now glean some insights as to what are the trends within their industries and how do we help customers to address them in such a way that they do not impact on their profitability, but they can actually transform while they perform. With those insights, we have now brought together, we're now taking to market solutions that we ourselves are using, and we can become an expert partner to our customers to help them understand, investigate, and select the right solutions that work for their organization so that they're prepared for the cost exercise and the future preparedness, and basically manage the balance appropriately. And I think Vodacom's performance since COVID is evidence of the fact that organizations can actually perform while they transform. The presentation today will highlight some of the solutions that we have from a Vodacom financial services perspective. And at this point, I would like to introduce Jenny Patha, who will speak to some of the solutions that we have on the Vodacom financial services side that can basically help provide that connected supply chain. Just as housekeeping, before we cross over to Jenny, I'd like to invite all of our participants to basically pose questions as and when we go through the presentations so that we can try and provide further information about some of the presentations that we are presenting today. So as and when the need arises, please share your insights, ask questions, and we will respond to them as we go through the presentations today. So I'd like to introduce again Jenny Patha. Jenny, the floor is yours.
Hi, am I live? Let me share my screen quickly.
Hi, Jenny. Yes, you're live.
Thank you very much. I'm just sharing my screen. There, it's up. Good day all. I'm Jenny Patha. I head up a division called Trading Bridge within Vodacom Financial Services. So today I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about the concept of the connected supply chain. So I want to start with talking a little bit about how the dramatic change of customer behavior and expectations are affecting the supply chain. So this is challenging the existing supply chain, the established chains and operations of leading organizations. And there's been increasingly major disruptions also affecting supply chain, most notably COVID-19 at the top of that list. On top of that, we have digital technologies that are appearing that's affecting every aspect of how companies run their business. And to succeed in this evolving marketplace, companies really need to transform their existing linear supply chain into what we call an autonomous supply chain ecosystem. So today's supply chain is far more complex than ever. It's become an ecosystem of suppliers, logistic companies, customers that stretch across the globe. And it relies on synchronized movements between interrelated parts in order to meet, as you know, the growing demand of customers for more creative and more innovative products. And at the end of the day, the supply chain fundamentals has not changed. The right product at the right place at the right time, and most importantly, at the right cost. So according to the World Economic Forum, there are more than 4 trillion consumer products that are made, shipped, and sold globally every year. Yet the end-to-end traceability of each item through its life cycle, from raw material to manufacturing and eventually down to the consumer, is still hugely challenging for the vast majority of goods. But all this information does lie in the supply chain. But as I mentioned, this modern supply chain is global, it's complex. And it's an ecosystem, right? It's an ecosystem of companies with its partners, its customers, its suppliers, each with its own IT infrastructure, each with its own business processes, its own systems. So complexity lies within this change. Now, even within a single organization, and I think many of you can attest to this, is This has caused major silos of within a single organization as well, with disparate silos of information. But now for a connected supply chain, we're not talking about a single organization. We are talking about a digital business system that needs to connect literally hundreds or thousands of trading partners, each with their own systems and their complexities. So let's step back a little bit. And what do we mean by a connected supply chain? So it's a means of connecting everyone in this chain, drawing together these disparate systems that I spoke about, the partner networks, to ensure that the information can flow end to end across this chain and is available to everyone in the chain wherever and whenever it's needed. Now, in order to achieve such a connected supply chain, it has to embrace digital technologies. And this will provide end-to-end visibility, but also improved business operations. And a truly connected end-to-end supply chain has the aim to reach 100% visibility, which is in near real time. And what this does is it creates an integrated view across the company, plus its suppliers, plus its partners, plus its customers. And all the different pieces of the systems talk to each other, sharing data insights and providing business benefits to everyone. So moving along to my next slide, which talks about supply chain transparency. Now, this isn't a new concept, but the advanced capabilities using the digital technologies that are available today, and we're going to touch on a few in our panel, this is making an entirely new level of visibility possible. Companies are beginning to create and use business networks and data networks that capture the full range of data in this value chain that I spoke about, all the way from raw materials to customers and back. And companies are looking to understand the visibility across this chain, and not only tier one suppliers, they're looking to look beyond tier one to tier two, tier three suppliers, especially on the back of COVID, when demand spiked in certain categories. So this enables them with the data to be able to make quick decisions and bring agility to their organization. So consider being able to have this 360 view or the 360 perspective on your full life cycle of your product. You'll be able to see the product origin, who provided the product and its parts, where did the raw material come from, how was it used, and then when you look at the delivery cycle, secondly, where was the product warehouse, when did it ship, which transport mode was used, and then finally, when you look at the third leg of this perspective, it's the customer behavior. How are customers using your product, and what is their feedback on your product? And because a connected supply chain enables the product to be traced end to end, companies can establish a clear chain of custody. Now, what does this mean? It literally means you can show that raw materials are not sourced in an environmentally damaging way. Now, this is quite important. You know, there's an increasing demand for companies to have greater insight in their environmental and social impact. And as most organizations, we strive to become a purpose-led organization. It's quite important to be able to communicate the origin of our products to our consumers and boost consumer confidence in our products. So understanding this life cycle and associated track and trace, companies can manage their supply chains more efficiently and optimize their operations. And ultimately, what this means is we're aiming to increase our customer satisfaction as you enabling yourself to react quickly to consumer demand. And building such responsiveness and what we call resilience into supply chain allows organizations to better predict and react to changing market demand. And all of this is based on that big data that I speak about that connects that entire chain. And one of the speakers up front in the main session spoke about how partnerships and collaborations is so important. Bringing together such supply chain transparency heavily relies on technologies, yes, but it also relies on the industry coming together to help each other in such a space. So moving on to my next slide. So I speak about why is the retail industry making use of technologies such as cloud, managed B2B service, and also the resulting data that's generated from such technologies. Now, this is a major step in creating the foundation, creating the first steps of a connected supply chain. So a recent IDC study that was conducted showed that 64% of retail respondents were leveraging B2B cloud services, mainly to future-proof the environment, to support growth and scalability. But remember, this also provides the foundation for any other digital transformation programs that you may have. Think about it as the piping or the plumbing and foundation for everything else that you're going to do to achieve this visibility, transparency, and connected supply chain that I speak about. Now, it should be clear that achieving a connected supply chain relies heavily on disruptive technologies. And some of those we're going to touch on: cloud, the Internet of Things, big data. I'll speak about Trading Bridge, which is a B2B integration layer, AI, predictive analytics. All of these technologies enable connectivity and transparency. And at the end of the day, aiming to make you more agile, information at your fingertips so that you can become nimble in your organization. And then lastly, I just want to deep dive into B2B integration slightly, and it's quite an important component in achieving supply chain resilience. Having that strong and scalable B2B integration layer. Now, aside from future-proofing your organization, it enables scalability. A B2B managed service will also bring flexibility and agility. As I mentioned, it's a foundation to the connected supply chain. But it removes the complexity of multiple integrations and enables you to adapt quickly. And I'm going to touch a little bit on that during our panel discussion about how we can enable bringing small SMEs and managing large organizations with different levels of complexities. And it's quite important that you have this flexible layer to allow you to adapt quickly. And a key component is obviously, as you can see on my screen, visibility and data insights. This enables your organization to be nimble and agile, and enables you quick decision making, especially in trying and uncertain times that we are in today. And it's built by enabling your organization to pivot quickly, such as changing suppliers depending on demand. Now, you can only do this if your platform itself enables such agility and visibility. So as I mentioned, we're going to touch on some of these technologies. So we have various assets as Vodacom in our stable, and my colleagues and I will touch on this in our panel, namely cloud, IoT, Trading Bridge, big data. And these assets are something that you can implement today to enable your organization to achieve that connected supply chain that I'm speaking about. I'm going to leave it there and stop sharing now. I'm going to hand over back to Pearl, and we're going to move into the panel. I hope that we have set the scene in terms of what a connected supply chain is. I'll wait for the rest of my colleagues to join me. If there are any questions, I'm happy to take it in the interim.
Hi, everybody. I'd like to we are going to now go into a panel discussion, and that will speak to the different areas that require some attention in order to basically execute on a connected supply chain process. As part of our panelists, I'd like to introduce first and foremost. I'm just going to introduce the panelists. We've got Jenny Paper, who you've just met. Then we've got Alison Foster, who will basically take care of the IoT side of the connected supply chain. Then we will have Kabelo Makwana, who I'm hoping will join us just now to talk about the multi-cloud computing aspect of a connected supply chain, because without the data and the insights and from the different areas of the supply chain, it kind of like becomes a moot point, because then we cannot do planning, we cannot fix, we cannot be flexible, we cannot be agile and nimble in order to basically address any risks or any pitfalls within our process. And last but not least, we've got the head of the logistics industry, and that is Ntabeleng Dikgangwane, and she will be talking about the key trends that are basically impacting this industry and necessitate a connected supply chain process. So I'd like to ask our panelists to say hello to our audience, and then we can basically get going.
Hi.
Hello, everybody. Hope everybody's well. Good afternoon.
I would like to start. So let me start with Ntabeleng. So seeing as how she's literally the industry lead for the logistics. Ntabeleng, do you want to give us a definition of transport and logistics within the Vodacom business aspect, and why there was this need to start becoming specialist in that area?
Yeah, thanks, Pearl, and good afternoon again, everybody. I suppose it's still okay to say compliments of the new season and wishing you health and prosperity for this new year. Pearl, thanks. I think the need to sort of, industrialize ourselves as such is to really work closely with our customers to understand the value chains of their operating models and how they work. What problems are they solving for? How do we understand those better? And how do we curate through co-creating solutions better by understanding the challenges that they face? So really immersing ourselves in their world. So we went through that really not just from a logistics perspective, but from an entire Vodacom, business perspective. So in Vodacom Business, Transport and Logistics, we've grouped a couple of, a number of customers that sort of specialize in this area, and they range across your entire supply chain, as it were. So right from, first mile logistics to, warehouse management to express, incorporating sort of, transport customers like your bus companies and your train companies as such, and also aviation. So that really sort of what defines what transport and logistics vertical or industry is composed of today in Vodacom Business. And it's been quite an interesting ride.
Okay. Talking about the industry, so what are some of the key trends that you've seen within the marketplace that indicate the need for a more connected supply chain? What's driving that industry?
So just to touch on a few, I think, the connected supply chain remains an ambition of the industry, and there is that persistent trend of really recognizing that there is parts of it that remain fragmented, and one of the ways that is consistently there is to enable it with a reliable and resilient comms platform. Participants and people that work across that chain need to have a reliable, uninterrupted comms platform. We're talking about, it could be from a mobile or a fixed perspective, an intelligent network that needs to power the processing of all the applications and transactions that happen across the supply chain. Understanding that there's many handshakes across the different parts of the value chain, and that has been even more so when it comes to COVID times, where we've seen another trend that has emerged quite strongly. The e-commerce trend, where faster turnaround times are the thing that is required. Delivery in terms of on time and in full, you can't afford to make mistakes because there isn't proper deviation management in place. And of course, having e-commerce as a rising trend. We've seen one of our customers literally moving from hundreds of parcels to millions of parcels that they needed to transact through in a matter of months. And this has also shown us as Vodacom Business that, and this is part of co-creating and curating solutions with customers, that they also started needing a different way of consuming our services. Self-service has become, a key thing. Being able to be agile in how we provide those services has become quite an increasing trend as well. And I think another interesting one is how analytics and business intelligence has become on the rise as well. When you look at a trend like shared warehousing and transport capacity across the many supply chain participants, there's been conversations about how can we put interesting algorithms on top of our big data sets, and we complement it with a wide variety of technologies rising, changing from or differing from RPA, your robotics process automation, and just highlighting what are some of the intelligence that we pick up and extract from that data. Of course, powered by intelligent networks, enabled by your mobile comms that is reliable and resilient, housing big data sets in our cloud, to ensure that agile delivery of transacting, and then putting on top of that a layer that can deliver these analytics to our customers and into the market to say, how is your spare capacity looking like at different times? What drives that? How can we map it to certain orders that are coming through? How can you use that from simple things like when to do stock taking to, when to expect to have extra capacity that you need and how you plan for that. So these are some of the trends that we have seen coming through, and I think it has made us as an organization realize that we really have the pedigree required to curate and co-create some of these solutions with our customers, and we've been really enjoying doing that. Sorry, Pearl, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, I think that's the catchphrase of post-2021. I'm on mute. So catching up with you after that, and Tabling, I'd like to basically then cross over to Jenny. And Jenny, for me, what I would like to understand is that how do we ensure better visibility to, supply chain organizations, from procurement to ordering, actually from inventory availability to procurement to ordering to payment. So what solutions does Vodacom provide in order to enable our customers in this area?
Sure. Thanks, Pearl. So I alluded to the benefits of supply chain visibility and resilience in my talk up front, and I mentioned I'm going to touch on Trading Bridge. So the Vodacom Trading Bridge is a platform enabling both large and small enterprises to digitize their supply chain. Now, it's quite vast in its operations. It's reaching in excess of 84 million transactions and an order value of around 200 billion rand per annum. And today we have all the major retailers and suppliers on the platform, trading orders, invoices, claims, credit note, any typical supply chain transaction on a daily basis. And we offer a range of solutions that enable this digitization, whether it's going from your traditional EDI, which is a structured format, to a structured format, or whether it's mobile and web ordering, and as well as OCR, so character recognition from PDFs and unstructured documents. And most recently, we've introduced robotics. So we were able to actually create bots and go onto portals, download a document, and transform that into a structured format. Now, all this brings together the enablement of digitization. So whether your customer needs to transact with a partner that has a complex ERP, or whether you're talking to a mom and pop store that's around the corner that has limited or no IT systems, we're able to get this document and send it to you in a consistent format all the time. So whether it's digitizing your order to cash set of transactions or your full route to market, whether you want to reach the informal retailer, the sponsor in the informal market, we're able to bring this digitization and visibility to you. And as one of the largest trading hubs in South Africa, we have strong partnerships, both locally and internationally. But one that I want to call out from a local perspective is the Consumer Goods Council of South Africa, which many of you will know. And we work with them quite closely to promote industry best practice. And somebody called it out in one of the sessions I heard in the morning, is that the importance of good quality data to bring a connected supply chain to life is very important. And together with this forum, we are pushing the importance of global identifiers, etc., and standards across the supply chain to bring good quality data, which will result in visibility, which will result in enabling your organization to become nimble, as my colleague mentioned. Now, I mentioned the COVID-19 pandemic, and I'm sure you've heard it a couple of times, has really accelerated digitization. But what it's also highlighted, and something that I want to highlight, is it's underlined the need to accelerate development of small businesses, where we can bring financial inclusion and enable them to participate in this digital economy. And that's where we bring the financial services, aside from digital trade, bringing in the payments, bringing in the funding to really bring these guys into the digital economy and grow them as part of that. So one of the key initiatives I just quickly want to touch on is what we're doing in what we call the unseen economy, both here in South Africa and in Africa with a partnership with M-Pesa, is where we are bringing the informal merchant to the forefront, bringing them into this digital trade, connecting them to wholesalers, as well as brands, but also enabling them with payments, so as well as access to credit and funding, new revenue streams, and really extending their marketplace. And the last initiative I just want to touch on is how we enable what I call the small supplier. An example I use often is a fudge lady. She's developing product in her home. She's getting that into market. How do we enable her? So do we have things like supply chain financing, depending on, and enabling her to digitize her trade and expand her marketplace. And we do that through a portfolio of products. We have a portal where she can come on, have a full view of Trading Bridge, be able to say, I'm receiving my orders from Spar, Pick and Pay. How do I turn that around into an invoice, and also get access to funding? So that's some of the exciting stuff that we have on Trading Bridge. And together with our customers, we work with them to actually digitize all of these steps, and enable both the SME as well as the large corporate to bring digitization across the supply chain and visibility. Thanks, Pearl.
Thank you very much, Jenny. I think the one thing we forgot to mention is that we do have a new disruption in South Africa, and it's called load shedding. And maybe the rain has also brought on some network connectivity issues. So with that being said, I'd like to also introduce Kabelo Makwana, who was impacted by this very disruptive aspect of our of our country's infrastructure at the moment. So Kabelo, if you'd like to say a couple of words before we cross over to Alison, here's your platform, just to introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Pearl. It goes without saying that you cannot have sufficient business continuity contingencies. So I guess as part of building redundant, always on infrastructures, we also have to build power always on, capabilities. So I'm glad to be part and parcel of the panel. And as Paul said, I look after cloud hosting and security in Vodacom Business. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Kabelo. I'd like to now cross over to Alison. So like I said previously, Alison takes care of our IoT business. And without insights that are basically being gleaned across the supply chain, it kind of like becomes a very fruitless exercise. So I'd like to understand from Alison, what solution does Vodacom Business offer that interlock with the supply chain? And how do we help customers to basically enable solutions like track and trace, warehousing and stock management across the entire value chain?
Thanks, Pearl, and hello to everyone. Vodacom IoT takes quite a modular approach in our technology stack. If you think about all the automation, digitization that's happening within the supply chain, retail, logistics space, you've got an ever-expanding range of devices that connect to the internet. And what we bring to the party is the convenience of the data collection. And how we do that is just by augmenting all these data points and creating a smarter and more interconnected world with the supply chain ecosystem. So if we have to have a look at our technology stack, and I know it's a phrase that's pretty much coined, but I don't think people quite understand the breadth of service that we are capable of offering in this space, is that we can go from the base up to the most complex type of augmentation of data. And it starts very simply with connectivity solutions. A lot of customers may have already connected infrastructure. They might have production lines. They might have warehouses that are already kitted out and smart and certain elements collecting data. But they just might need a simple solution as connectivity. So we have the entire base layer of connectivity options, which consists of standard GSM or our low-powered network options, such as NB-IoT. We then move into sort of the Wi-Fi Bluetooth space, and we have solutions around that. You then can opt whether you want to have that service managed or unmanaged. And by managed, we basically mean is that it gets wrapped around with a portal infrastructure that does the management of those. So if you think about large environments, specifically warehouses, where they will have probably many data points that they want to connect using a SIM or Wi-Fi. They might want to concatenate that into a single portal where they can manage it, switch on, see where the battery powers are low, etc., etc. So that's what we term managed. So you can do it managed or you can manage it yourselves. And then lastly, you can either have local infrastructure or you have infrastructure that you can actually globally roam. So for example, we have a solution where you can actually deploy connected items or connected devices from local, put it in, and it can actually be activated in any geography across the globe. So this is particularly sort of relevant to your logistics space, or if you're tracking high-value goods that go cross-border. We have various, dependent on the device that you want to use, etc. You can actually use the service for that sort of stuff. Our tracking companies, for example, use this as a secondary backup to some of their satellite connections, etc. So that's the option in terms of local and roaming. And it's basically the precipice on which we start IoT, and that's where it originated from. However, moving out of that, if you actually have a look at facilities, whether they be a warehouse, whether it be a depot, whether it be a production plant, you have got loads and loads of data points that reside within those environments. So what we then bring to the party is an edge device as well as the platform where you can actually then augment. You collect all those data points, collect the information, and you'll be able to present it through rapid digitization into a format which you can use in any of your other automation efforts or your digitization efforts. So those are the two base sort of technology services that we offer. What we then go forth and do is we actually have a look at very specific solutions which you can purchase as a module, which lie on top of these infrastructures. So we have a consultative approach with you where we understand what have you got in place, what is in play within your warehouse, depot, logistics environment, what other systems do you have at play, because remember, it's not an isolated system, and the interlock in order to have a specific value out of it is quite irrelevant in terms of many layers of information. So what we look at then is we look at assets. What assets have you got? What are your people processes? What are your production and operational processes? What have you got that is connected in terms of that? Where are the gaps, and how can we assist you with that? We then start to have a look at an overlay function in terms of saying, okay, what is it? What outcomes do you want to see in all these different places? And many use cases come out in various environments. You can have point solutions such as equipment monitoring, basic service, inventory, and track and trace, where we use different types of technology. One thing that's coming out now from Vodafone, our mother company, is a smart label, which has an embedded. It's flat. It's like your courier stickers. It goes onto various packages or pallets or whatever it is that you may want to track. There's lots of those sort of inventory track and trace mechanisms out there. We have some solutions that are in-house or partners that we partner with. We also are very open for customers to bring us their tech, and we actually look at how we can actually connect it to our edge devices. Other sort of point solutions are like spatial occupancy. So take a plant, for example, production plant, where stuff is you want to get efficiencies. You want to see where stuff is getting stuck, or where processes are getting stuck, where people are congregating. You might find that your dispatching unit, your dispatching area is, for some or other reason, a lot of stuff gets stuck there, and you want to understand why. You can actually then sort of track through spatial occupancy and movement, understand where Is it getting stuck, and why does it stop there? And when you start overlaying the various functions, you'll be able to actually then put the puzzle pieces together. We furthermore then move into other sort of areas, sort of access control and camera analytics. And you might say, like, how does this deem relevance to the supply chain? And it becomes quite relevant when you've got your logistics partners standing outside waiting to actually pick up or deliver. Dependent on how advanced you want to get with your ecosystem, you can actually overlay a number of systems whereby you would be able to, through the integration into the logistic company's vehicle tracking system, know that the vehicle is standing at the gate. How long has he been standing at the gate? Should he, from a logistics point of view, they would say, okay, well, let's contact the warehouse or the dispatch unit and say, okay, how much longer till we have to load? Okay, there's a delay by an hour. I can actually send my truck to go and deliver somewhere else nearby and come back, for example, if they've got booked slots. There's various ways that we can use access control and camera analytics. The camera analytics also, from a logistics point of view, when they're arriving at the warehouse, you can do number plate recognition. You can also then just watch, obviously, loading and offloading of stuff. There are various elements that we can actually use in terms of that. You've then got your cold chain monitoring. Most of the environments are pretty advanced on the side. So what we do is we tend to actually overlay the cold chain information with other relevant information, especially in the health sector space, where you need to actually constantly monitor temperatures to avoid the wastage and loss of drugs that actually need to be kept at certain temperatures. We then also go into sort of the smart factory, smart warehouse environment, where we start looking at sort of specific lines. So whether you want to start tracking repairs and maintenance on a robotics arm, whether you want to actually put in place an augmented reality maintenance app so that it makes your partners, your ecosystem of repair and maintenance people to come in. They can actually scan the QR code. It then actually says, right, this is what it is. We bring up the augmented reality, and you can actually then walk them through the process. Training of staff, tracking of staff. In the COVID environment now, we've launched a lot of different services where we actually do occupancy monitoring. So how many people are in a room at any given stage? Where are people moving? If there's been a case, how do we do that? Thermal scanning. There are a range of point solutions, but I think the value that Vodacom brings to the party is that we have all the building blocks that you can, dependent on your maturity within your digital journey, is we have the building blocks to actually collect the data, augment the data in order to give you a better visibility of your supply chain end to end, from pickup or from manufacture right through to delivery, certainly by layering the information. And I'm sure when Cabello speaks, he will speak to how this then augments into the cloud, and actually you can start doing some other analytics around the information that we gather. So we have all the different building blocks. We have point solutions. But I think the best bet is to first understand the environment in order to understand the gaps. But safe to say, we have the relevant stuff that customers need to actually give you that visibility, and within the supply chain allow you to actually do that forecasting and start actually moving up the value chain in terms of how you want to manage the customers, your customers and your suppliers. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you very much, Alison. Yeah, there's a lot of data, right? Ntabeleng alluded to the multiple systems that exist within the supply chain that sometimes don't talk to each other. So there's a lot of data from trade bridge, from fleets, from warehousing, from cameras. And then the question becomes, where does this all information go? What does one do with it? Does the traditional infrastructure that we've always had, the MPLS and all of that, provide with the redundancy, the high availability, and the flexibility that is required, that the customer is always on, provides real-time visibility and across the organization and even to their end customers? And to basically just answer some of those questions, I'm going to hand over to Kabelo, who's now going to give us an idea as to the kind of infrastructure that is required in the back end, whether on-prem or in the cloud, to make all of this information come to life so that the customers can make informed decision and plan and become more productive and profitable because that's what it's all about. We're all running a business, and profitability and increasing the bottom line is what it's all about. So Kabela, I'm going to hand over to you to talk about what at Vodacom we provide to enable this connected supply chain.
Yeah, thanks, Pearl. That's a good tee up. And maybe let me just start by saying that I think what we are inferring here is that, we need to be deliberate about how we think about how we capture data, how we store data, and how we manipulate and disseminate that data for the benefits of driving, value, outcomes, and meeting client expectations. At the core of all of retail is really the customer, right? And customer expectations are probably what we are all trying to address, now and under COVID circumstances, and generally speaking, in terms of the goods and services that a typical retailer would provide in the market. However, these customer expectations have fundamentally shifted, in the era of hyper-personalization, where, beyond personalized, they expect the very elevated personalized service expectation that our customers have. They also want to be digital first. And COVID has done an actual, an inordinate amount of, work in accelerating this expectation. At no time is it more relevant than it is now to think about how do we pivot to a digital type of retail experience. Whilst we digitalize, we also need to make sure that the service is frictionless. We need to make sure that the service is secure. People are very concerned about hopping onto the cyberspace, and security has become very much front and center in the cyberspace as a key customer concern. But more importantly, as the previous speakers mentioned, Tabeleng spoke to it, etc. These systems need to be integrated as well. I think the proverbial phrase is that it needs to be 3 clicks away. So this service needs to be seamless in effect. So when we think about digital, transformation of retail, there are fundamentally 3 anchor considerations in terms of how we've approached it from a cloud hosting and security perspective. It's really thinking about transformation of the engagement in the context of what I mentioned earlier. It's about how you optimize your operations in the retail space, and then increase insights in order to derive more value, right? So implicit in that is really about data, and then also the systems of operations and the systems of engagement to build a multi-speed IT environment. So from a Vodacom Business perspective, we've curated and brought together best of breed hyperscale technologies in the era of cloud. But let's not also forget that in practical terms, the reality of retail environment in South Africa today, as well as probably in the rest of the continent, is that it's still very traditional. It's still very brick and mortar. It's still people, based on footfall and trying to create an infrastructure to capture that footfall as much as possible in terms of merchandising, and how we stock up, the retail outlets. However, the reality of it is that, we need to take those progressive steps because, beyond COVID, and in context of what I mentioned earlier, people want to actually experience the interaction with the retailers in a different way and integrated with the supply chain that supports, for instance, shipping, logistics, and delivery. So the bringing together of the let's call it the top of the leading providers of hyperscale cloud infrastructure starts to enable us to serve customers in a different way, i.e., we are able to effectively enable our customers to be able to scale at pace build elastic operating environments. And these environments must be secure. They must be available and always on, but must also provide a differentiated experience, aka when a retailer wants to go online and provide a different shopping experience and provide omni-channel engagement and a rich experience for its customers, the underlying infrastructure has to be capable and enable that, right? So we've brought on board technologies from these hyperscalers. I mean, for instance, as an example, you think about, for instance, Amazon Forecast, management is a nascent cloud-capable technology, or Amazon fraud detection from an AWS point of view, right? Beyond what you provide on the shop floor, which could be derived from integrating IoT-enabled devices, and then bringing edge computing right down to the shop floor through 4G and 5G technologies as speeds improve quite significantly in the advent of these connectivity mediums. We are able to now take intelligence to the edge and allow for these experiences to be enjoyed by customers in terms of augmented reality, virtual experiences, real-time engagement, as well as, let's call it digital marketing and suggestions to drive more customer loyalty, right? So cloud is basically a fantastic medium to be able to do that, because the intelligence is embedded in the technology. With the realities of still operating in the traditional sense, we also have taken into consideration that most of our retailers need a smooth migration path, a continuum almost, if you want to think about it, that takes them from cradle to this panacea that I'm sketching here, which involves, therefore, how do they actually take care of the existing infrastructure investment, because a lot of the enterprises have invested a lot of money in building in-house capability from an infrastructure point of view, etc. So how do we take this and maybe take baby steps and say, maybe first step would be, co-location, and then making sure that we put it into an environment that has N+, redundancy and power capability, etc. And then we start to provide the business continuity and disaster recovery to mitigate against things like load shedding, as an example. These are the practicalities of our circumstances. So we cannot be oblivious to them. And then you move from, let's say, a coloed environment, and you start to move into maybe even private cloud or bare metal services. And progressively, you build a hybrid cloud environment so that you can then take advantage of these types of technologies, which will allow for elastic computing, always on, secure, from the get-go type of operating environments. We then look at how we overlay these infrastructures with the right application services and the right integration layer beyond the security. So my esteemed colleague Jenny spoke about the Vodacom trading bridge. The reality of that, if you also kind of peel the layers and deconstruct, is that we host the trading bridge within Vodacom on behalf of our clients. So our ability to host that platform very much depends on the platform as a service capabilities that we've built based on cloud technology, as well as the underlying infrastructure that we've built to provision trading bridge on a scalable basis to take care of millions and millions of transactions and enable our retailers to be always on. And maybe the last thing I wanted to talk about, just in terms of the underlying technologies, we also look at data from a point of view of Vodacom and Vodafone being the second largest telecoms company in the world. Has access to a lot of anonymized, data that could enable, for instance, what Ntabeleng spoke about. When you start to build data lakes, one of the things that a data lake needs and is hungry for is data, is rich data sets and data sources. A lot of retailers collect data through loyalty card schemes and so on and so forth, and various other mediums. And sometimes they also acquired from third parties. So when you start to require that and build data lakes to derive customer insight, so that you can then have targeted service offerings, goods and service offerings, targeted e-commerce, towards specific sectors and demographics. You need the data sets, and you need the algorithms that will advise, your operators and your various personnel on what offers and what opportunities they need to take advantage of based on the customer buying patterns and customer buying behavior. So we are also able to provide anonymized data sets as part of our data as a service capability. So we've effectively, just in summary, we've consolidated and built a cloud agnostic capability, a multi-cloud capability, put differently, bringing the best of breed of the hyperscale cloud providers in the likes of Microsoft, AWS, Huawei, to name but a few, as well as VMware-based sort of private cloud instances. We are able to help customers journey through stepwise, taking baby steps all the way up to a full hybrid cloud or even a full public cloud, environment. And then we are also able to, make it easy for customers to centralize management from a single pane and a single management dashboard to take care of things like billing analytics, optimization of the cloud, and then provisioning for application services, whether you're running, SAP ERP systems to take care of your enterprise resource planning, from stocking to merchandising to financials, etc., and offer that as a managed service to our clients ultimately who want to take advantage of that. All of that is done obviously with the notion that it needs to be always on, and we provide the business continuity, security, and disaster recovery capabilities in that context. That's really what's the building blocks of being able to then establish really the e-commerce capabilities, connecting IoT, etc. Sorry.
No, that's okay. Thank you very much, Kabelo. I think I'd like to thank some of our customers and listeners who have basically given us a thumbs up on the presentation. So it does resonate with quite a few of our customers. Also, what I'd like to highlight is a question that was asked on the platform to say, with regards to track and trace and physical security aspects of IoT, is Vodacom working with a specific customer to alleviate some of the truck congestions that we see at the ports, and not only at the ports, but I think even at the retailers. I think when we speak about customers that have big stores, we generally talk about the Bakkie Brigade that will basically block the entire, receiving area just when there's a big truck that's standing in the back end. So it's all about how do we help customers to manage chaos like that and make some sense out of it in their planning stages. So with that being said, there's a couple of issues or areas that were touched on across all our panelists. Alison referred to, is there a need for rip and replace? And I think we've got assurances across our panelists that customers can do it piecemeal. They need to decide what is important to them at any given time, start there, and slowly but surely get to that nirvana that Kabelo was basically suggested in the back end, right? And we talked about the potential to lift and shift, especially when you've got a big ERP system that you basically want to put on a multi-cloud platform. So that capability is also available should the customer decide to do it that way, whether it's on a hybrid cloud or, fully in the cloud. And then we also talked about providing scalable and always available but flexible solutions that will help the organization stay productive but also profitable. So when we talked about the balancing act between cost and future preparedness, I think our panelists spoke to all the aspects of our introduction. And I'd like to say thank you for my panelists, and just to kind of like give assurances that we are already working with some of our customers on these concepts. So it's not foreign. It's not all pie in the sky. There are actual use cases that we are already exploring with some of our customers. And we would welcome any of our listeners today to basically, connect with us. Let's find out how we can work together to provide you with that nirvana that we are then suggesting from a Vodacom business perspective. Let's partner with you. And I see there's another question that's come through. How does Vodacom prepare its customers that are looking to make use of 4IR technologies, however they mature to conduct descriptive analytics? Mwanam Matlawa, I think we would like to partner with you to explore some of these areas on a one-to-one basis, understand what your strategic intent is within the organization, help you work out what your maturation process would look like, and so that we can basically give you the visibility across your supply chain that will make you profitable, but also increase your customer service. So let's engage one-to-one. You are welcome to basically provide us with your information on the discussion panel, or you can basically email any of us. I think IT Africa will provide you with our details, and we can basically deep dive and work with you in a workshop environment, and maybe even brainstorm some new ideas as to how we can work with you. So every customer is different, and we would basically like to treat you in that way, where we give you niche solution host and we bid you farewell. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.